Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Jane the Virgin, Season 1, Episode 19, Chapter 19. In this episode, well, we say a real goodbye to Roman Zazo in this episode. We find out that Michael's partner is corrupt, and also Jane gets dumped yet again. Oh boy. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Lauren for commissioning this episode, and I feel like I'm saying this a lot lately, but thank you, Lauren, for being flexible, because I once again had to move things around. I don't think that I am alone in this based on what I am seeing from my friends, but everything has been nonstop emergencies lately, and I am extremely over it. And if you are also going through this, please know I fucking feel you, and I am giving you a hug and just saying you're going to get to the other side of it, and it's going to suck, but you will get to the other side of it, because I have to also get to the other side of it. We have to tell each other this, right? It's true, but we don't believe it, so we got to tell each other. So that's how we're starting this episode off, is cheering for each other. All right, so on to the episode. We start off, as usual, with a flashback to Jane's getting sex education at the Catholic school that she was sent to. And she was, of course, just basically told sex is a thing and you should not do it. And then we have her out in front of the school, like during recess or something. And she is holding the flower and telling all of her friends the thing about like crumpling it up but trying to make it new again. And she's really feeling like this is her element. She gets to like teach these girls who don't know anything else the truth and pass on the knowledge that she got from her grandmother. And I love this so much, y'all, because she does this. And Lena, who is the friend that is doing the baby shower for her, is there as well. And I just want to say that this young Lena, who, like, she looks so much like the older actress. And I enjoy that she's kind of taller than every other girl in this scene, when she is actually super short as a grown woman. But I like to think that she just shot up to this height that is, yes, taller than most other fifth graders, but barely taller. And then she just stayed there, which would be completely acceptable. And she says that's not what happens when you have sex. I have 4 sisters. I know where everything goes and when and for how long. And Jane is really like confused. You see that moment on her face where she realizes that what she wanted to impart on all of her friends, something that she really believes and has internalized a lot, it's just of no interest to any of them. They all immediately turn to Lena and want to know. And Jane, I think, just wanted somebody else kind of in the boat with her. And nobody really wants to get on board. Sorry, Jane. So then we go to present day Jane and her going through the 7 stages of grief, dealing with her breakup. But it's so rough because she is, at one point there's like the guilt bit, and she is saying that I should have left it alone. His father just died. This is his legacy. And probably, you know, you guys know, I was very hard on the last episode and how much it seemed to want to like blame Jane, because it was all about self-sabotage. So that was kind of what it felt like they were saying, was that this was Jane's way of self-sabotaging. But I totally disagreed. That said, I do think that there is something to be said for what she mentions here, just like his dad did just die, and how what somebody has left for you is going to feel so much more crucial than it normally would. And maybe the way that he's prioritizing things right now is part of just his grieving process, which I didn't give enough weight probably when I was talking about it last time. I just felt like everybody was acting like Jane was making, or not even making things up, because we never hear her explain exactly what's going on. They all just acted like she was overreacting. And I'm not getting back into that again. So finally, she gets to acceptance, and she comes and knocks on his door and says, "This is a mistake. We've been having some problems, but we can fix this." And what she convinces him is that they should do couples therapy. And she's trying to get from him initially what happened that caused him to want her, to break up with her. And he says, "I just realized that we were too different." But he doesn't ever mention having talked to his mom. And I thought that was like a really weird thing, since she knew he was contacting her. And then we find out later on that he basically knew she was going to try to suggest it was just because of meeting his mother, and didn't want her to make this like association that isn't real. It's so hard, guys, because this is something that, like, I think all of us really do. And it's incredibly painful to watch from the outside because everybody else knows. But when you're in the middle of it, we all just love to think that we're so different. We are really special. And the kinds of like psychological shit that may get to other people, they don't get to us the same way. It's not like that with us. And truly, it's just the same. You know, we may react to things slightly differently. Nature versus nurture, who knows? But the ways in which our subconscious manifests things in our actions, and just the fact that that happens, that's real. And that just happens with everybody, you know? So he's over here like, "I didn't want to tell you about meeting my mom because I knew you'd think I was dumping you due to meeting her," which she responds to with, "Yeah, that's what's happening." And he's like, "No, but it's not though. And I knew you'd say that." And I'm like, bruh, it is though. It is. And she would have said that because that's what it is. And he as good as admits that to the therapist later, but I don't think he was lying to Jane in that scene. And I think what he says to the therapist, he genuinely like doesn't see the connection. But later to the therapist, he is explaining to her that he feels he is in a really dark place and he doesn't want to drag Jane down with him. Now, this is all after the second breakup, because we have a whole episode of him thinking that he wants to work on things and, you know, deciding how much he cares about Jane. And this was tough because I watched him go through these motions and it did feel like there was something that rekindled. And then to see the way that he like pulled away anew, I almost felt like the show was just wasting my time a little bit, you know? And I know that's supposed to be part of it, that you get your hopes up that things are going to be okay between them, and then a wrench is thrown in. But it just sort of, there's a scene that's supposed to be sort of the pivotal point in the pool. We'll talk about that, but I just didn't quite feel it, I guess, is all I'm going to say about that. I just felt like jerked around a little bit. But what he says to his therapist, it's really their like couples therapist, but I guess he went there for a one-on-one appointment, is that he doesn't want to drag Jane down. And this is the kind of thing that I really, really understand. And I think that I actually, this is something that I deal with in friendships as well. And I know a lot of folks, Rashawn, she would not, I don't think, be mad at me using her name because she knows she does this. But some of us, the way we were raised made us feel like we needed to earn space in people's lives, and that we needed to make ourselves less burdensome to those around us because we were kind of a burden by default. And so we needed to make it as easy on everyone else as we could. And that can manifest in a lot of different weird ways. For me, it was a lot about tamping my emotions down, obeying rules pretty strictly because I didn't want to cause trouble. And I knew, my parents had been through stuff, and I really internalized like their struggles from before I was even born as being like, my parents really went through so much and I don't want to make life harder for them. Or, we don't have very much money, or we don't have this and that. So I'm going to try and like not ask for stuff or not do certain things and whatever. And that has carried over into not wanting to show people any emotions in person that will require them to engage with me on a level that feels like labor. And I'm using all of this language to really couch it in the fact that I am not sure the other party would see it as labor, but that's what I feel like I am demanding in that moment, is that I am asking for somebody to like help pick me up, and they may not be in a place to do that. And I don't want to be a burden in that sense. So I keep it to myself and then break down in private because it's a lot safer in my head. But what winds up happening is that being alone with it makes you feel like there is no end in sight, because your own brain, when you're in these dark places, is not reliable. So what it will tell you is, this is who you are, this is what your life is, this is what it's always going to be like. And you can't like pep talk yourself when you're in a truly bad place. It doesn't work. Like, it's like trying to do surgery on yourself. So what you don't get by like keeping it to yourself is any feeling of like, not even necessarily closure, but any like light at the end of the tunnel. It just is a thing that can sort of feed on itself. And I'm saying this like having a bit of a breakdown by yourself and crying. I'm not saying that's an inherently bad thing. Like, sometimes you just need to be alone and deal with your emotions and feel a thing. I'm talking about like, you're not talking about a thing with anybody and you're just dealing with it repeatedly, daily, monthly, on your own, and won't open up to friends. So the fact that Raphael is feeling like he would be a burden on Jane is something that frustrates me so much to watch, but I also really, really understand. And this is the kind of probably plot line that would have pissed me off like several years ago, because it feels like such a cheap ploy for drama. And it clearly is still, But I will say that what's happened to him has felt heavy enough that I can actually buy it. You know, there are times where, oh, I'm pushing her away to protect her. I mean, that is something that really does not often work for me. It's so tired. But I kind of get where he's coming from, especially after being like told repeatedly by a parent that you haven't done anything right in your life. And like, you feel like you've got so many things to prove and so much on your plate. I just want to say that while this plot point irritates me and I don't like it, I also don't hate it. You know, it's like I'm basically sort of sitting back and accepting that we're going to have like tropes in here where people split up and then get back together and maybe split up again and maybe get back together again. I get it. That's just going to be part of what the show does. And honestly, that's part of what people do. But I just had to like kind of talk about it in real terms because there is something to, especially somebody who is as bright and bubbly as Jane, who has such a positive outlook and who, yeah, she's like been through some things in her life for sure. But she, all things considered, had a pretty positive childhood. And maybe he just feels like she doesn't really understand what it's like to not have support in any real way. You know, her mother was a huge cheerleader for her, her grandmother as well. And then when her father was able to finally like meet her and see her, he is completely doting. Raphael had this dad who saw him as basically a waste of space. And then he finds out that his mother was right there the whole time and never bothered. And I really wonder about like his dad dying. And if she heard about that, she could have seen him after even having taken the money and evidently didn't make the effort. And I know it's not supposed to have been that long since his father died. So maybe, you know, but I still feel like it really speaks to how little she gives a fuck. That it wasn't like she took the money because she desperately needed it, then ran off and was always thinking about Raphael and wondering how he was doing and champing at the bit to talk to him. And as soon as she saw the death notice, she like got in touch and was like, I'm so sorry, but I really wanted to reconnect. No, he had to find her. He had to put all the effort in, and she just didn't seem that excited about it. It's a really different situation for him, you know? Lauren says, yeah, it's somewhat earned, but agree frustrating. Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to sort of talk about the arc of their like working through and then breaking up again, like as a whole. And we can talk about, I'm going to sort of jump ahead here because the thing that's going on is they're going to be having their baby shower this weekend. And evidently either they just straight up forgot about it or just lost track of time. But they are in the middle of sort of fighting about whether or not they want to stay together when her friends come running in and they all have like presents and balloons and yada, yada, yada. And they are setting things up for, I think, the next day because she winds up, you know, going home and finding an appointment for a couples counselor. And then after counseling, goes to her shower, like it looks right away. But this couples counseling. So the woman playing their counselor is the lady from My Big Fat Greek Wedding, I think. She's very good. And it's a fascinating thing to see because they're like, she asks them to tell her their relationship in a nutshell. And I thought it was going to be a lot shorter than it was, but they decided to go into like literally everything that has happened on the show so far, which I actually am sort of wondering now. I really like that, but it makes me wonder like if they're going to have this therapist be a bit of a recurring character, and they wanted it established that she knew all the major show plot beats so that she could connect things for them in conversations. I don't know if that's a thing or not, but I wouldn't be mad about it. Like, having a therapist as a regular in a TV show is a really useful tool, I feel like, for storytelling and, sometimes like exposition. And it can be abused a bit, but I usually kind of like it because I am a sucker for like psychology and the phenomenon of that in characters and the way we write and everything. So, I'm just into it. So we'll see if that's at all a thing. But as of right now, she is talking to the two of them about, after they tell her the whole hideous, gory story of everything for the past couple of months, they finally tell her what it comes down to is that we are really different and we were raised really different and we have always like each wanted different things. And now we are trying to like make this thing work between us. And we're having trouble navigating those differences, is the way Jane puts it. And she says, I believe that you can like work on that and navigate that and get past it if that is what you want. But is that what you want, Raphael? Because Jane is the one over here sitting on the edge of her seat, back straight, full eye contact, eager and ready to go. And you are having a difficult time making eye contact and are sort of slumped back and closed off in your posture and just overall kind of giving me the vibe of somebody who isn't really into it. And I have said so many times how much more attractive I find Raphael when he isn't being the suave guy. And this was a scene that was sort of, I won't even say he was attractive. I will just say that I really appreciated his skills as an actor because the way that he like withdraws after they're done telling the story and the way that he like looks at Jane, but also doesn't really want to be looking at her, like he's asked, do you, and he says, do I love her? Yes. But then when she says, want to fix this, and he says, I just don't know if these things can be fixed. And you see how disappointed Jane is. She wanted him to just say yes. But I kind of appreciate the fact that he is really honest here because, I mean, y'all know therapy is so difficult because a lot of us lie to ourselves, or if you're doing couples counseling, we'll lie to the counselor. So it's not even really like, if you're not prepared to tell the truth about everything, you're just wasting your time and money and you're wasting their time. Like, it just doesn't do anything. But so many people will go to therapists and then they will just bullshit themselves to the therapist. And it's like, this is a sort of thing that it will really particularly happen with people who are like narcissists because they don't know how to see a perspective in a sort of more objective light. And I have a friend who is a psychologist, and she was just telling me about like occasionally getting to understand somebody on a deeper level or meeting a family member of theirs and hearing the other side of the story and realizing how completely this person misrepresented what had happened. And, the therapist was really feeling like she was on their side, so to speak. I mean, but when she heard more than once from different people, a completely different version of events, just began to realize, oh, this person isn't interested in like growing and moving forward because they don't tell me the truth because they haven't admitted it to themselves. And it's so hard because you can't convince people who aren't prepared to be honest that they aren't being honest. Like, it's just a sort of circular thing. And you just have to like watch them waste their time and stuff until they realize that they either have got to shit or get off the pot, as they say. So Raphael, the fact that he admits, I'm not sure this can be fixed, I personally really appreciate it, because I didn't know whether or not he was going to be honest with her about that. I kind of thought he might just say, yeah, of course I do. And we would see that his heart wasn't in it, but he's just going to go with it, and maybe it would like catch somehow, you know? But instead he tells the truth. She looks disappointed. And then we have the whole thing at the what do you call it? Shower. And the shower is a whole thing, but at the end he's supposed to like come in with flowers and everything, and she doesn't think he's going to come. And he does. He shows up after all. And there's a whole thing where they're asked questions about each other, which was part of what started Jane down the path of like, we don't actually really know each other very well. And he is asked what traits he hopes the baby inherits from Jane. And he says all of them. There is nothing that I don't like about Jane. And all of a sudden he realizes like how true that is and what a great person she is. And he tells her, you know what? Yeah, I want to try and fix this. And she's like so elated. So they have the therapy, like, exercises that they have to do. And they're hanging out by the pool. And one of them is like prolonged eye contact. Now, this is one of those ones that, I have seen videos of this being like requested between either couples or people who don't know each other, and they treat it like it's really, really weird. But what I have watched happen with people is remarkable. Like staring people in the eyes, it does something. It really does. So I was a little disappointed that there isn't more to this, but I kind of understood that like on camera, it might be hard to get across the way that can affect people. So they pull away from that. Then she has like a list of spontaneous activities, to which he rightfully is like, doesn't that feel like it might be an oxymoron? And then she's like, you're right. How about skinny dipping? Which he challenges her a little and says like, oh, you would never. To which she replies, I have done it twice. And I was like, word? I was not expecting that, Jane. All right. I see you. So they both strip in the water. I really appreciate that like Jane is clearly wearing like white cotton panties with like a pink ribbon edging. Just something that's very sort of like young. Oh, a little frumpy, you could even say. But they are there and they start making out. And she had a moment with Lena when they're predicting. I'm sorry if you guys can hear my cat. She's in my office. I didn't realize she was in here when I started, but there she is. But she has this moment with Lena during the shower where there is a bowl for everybody putting their predictions of the day the baby will be born. And Lena is very confident that she knows when, that it'll be a week before Jane's due date, because that is how they handle cesareans. And she is fully expecting that Jane is going to have a cesarean, because she's like, you're a virgin. Why the fuck wouldn't you try to like preserve that area so that the first time isn't already like mangled by a baby? Which she doesn't say the word mangled, and I know mangling is not what happens to vaginas. Like that's the point, is that they're extremely elastic, and even the idea that they get stretched out from childbirth isn't even really true. But the concept is what she says to Jane: you're gonna lose your virginity to your baby. which Jane is like, I wasn't thinking about it like that. And she says, you should. And I was kind of like, should she? But also, that was something I said in like episode 2. And it was really weird to me that Jane wasn't thinking that way. You know, like, I understand she's got a lot going on and everything, but the fact that she is planning on pushing a baby out of a vagina that she hasn't even gotten to use yet, like, that really sucks. It's just, it's not the way I would want to go. It's just not. So it gets in her head a little bit, I think. So when she's making out with Raphael and they're really feeling some like chemistry here, she tells him that she is ready to have sex, that she wants to do it. And it's a passionate moment, you know, it's very private and they're really like caught up in the moment. And he is obviously excited about it and is like, really? Are you sure? And she's like, yeah. And y'all, I think they were going to have sex in the pool. Now, maybe that's not how it was going to happen. Maybe they were just going to keep making out and maybe they were going to like get out of the water eventually and take things into the penthouse. But I really got the vibe that they were going to have sex in the pool. And I just really, really need to be clear. Pool sex and hot tub sex are terrible. The edge of the pool? Okay. Hop up on the edge of the hot tub? Maybe. In the water? No. That water, first of all, if it's chlorinated, you are just asking for problems. Secondly, it will wash away any natural lubrication and make things a lot more difficult. And thirdly, the whole the whole way that you have to position yourself in order for thrusting to like work, when you're buoyant, it is not easy to do, which is why a lot of the time things get taken up out of the pool or hot tub because it's difficult to pull. You can do it by like, you know, her wrapping her legs around him. But frankly, for her first time, that sounds like a really bad idea. Now, I'm not saying that if you are out there having good pool or hot tub sex, that you're a liar. Maybe it can work, but I have been around a bit and I have tried a few things and it has not been good any of the times and it was a variety of different people. So I feel like I know whereof I speak. And I just kept thinking, Jane, babe, this is like not the way you want this to go down. It is going to be so much like more awkward and weird. Plus the fact that I am really big on, if she is a virgin, that you want to go very, very heavy on the foreplay, which ideally you would always do. But, you know, you're going to want to make sure that she is good and warmed up. And it was like they were just going to make out and then she was going to impale herself on him right there in the pool with no other. And, you know, like, that's not going to do the job, man. Come on. Come on. So I just had to say it. You know I did. Because, come on. Come on. But they get interrupted because they're in a pool that is supposed to be closed for the night. And, of course, he's the owner, so he can do what the fuck he feels like. But the security guard comes around not realizing who it is. He must have felt, oh boy, mortified when he realizes. And Jane pulls away from Raphael. The moment is broken. And she realizes that she was about to have sex with him and that she doesn't want to anymore. And when we see her talking to her mother later, she says essentially that like she wanted to in the moment. And that really, like, when her mother is saying, but it's so important to you, why? Why were you willing to break that? And her mom kind of gets her to admit, I was hoping that having sex with him would sort of fix things. And she knows it won't, intellectually, but I kind of understand why she felt that, I get it. And, oh, brother, am I going to have to let her out? Are you? Come here, you. Look at her ignore me. She's so bitchy. Come here. Yeah. She wants to get out. I'll let her out in a second. I'm almost done. Hold your horses. Keep your hair on. So anyway, when at the end of the episode, she comes to Raphael right before he turns the tables, what she's thinking is like, all right, well, if I want to do something big that is a kind of compromise in our relationship and we'll move things forward, maybe moving in together is the thing. So that's what she's planning. But, and it's, she has this whole speech about how she wants to move. Like, she has a plan. And I really liked that I felt that in the scene, when she comes in and she says what she wants to do, it's very much her amping up to a whole like presentation that she's kind of got in her head. And he has to cut her off before she can really like get any steam up. So, all right. There's so much that happens this episode. I got them out of the way, basically. There's the whole thing with Rogelio and Shamara. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. We know Shamara kissed Marco. It turns out Rogelio has a history with Jane's writing teacher and basically ghosted her because he thought what they were doing was transactional and she thought that they had a real connection. And so they had planned on going on a trip. He didn't get the role and he thought, well, obviously I wasted my time, but she thought he just wanted to run away and have sex for a week and he didn't want to. And that was offensive. And I get that. So they spend some time talking about it because she holds a grudge. This cat. All right. Hold on. Oh man, she bore it for a surprisingly long time. But the thing she interrupts a song that he is singing, which actually it's kind of cute, but the fact that she interrupts it with her grudge is so drama queen. I was really like, girl, come on, get it together. But when they sit down and talk about what happened and he apologizes, she accepts it with a lot of grace. And I realized too late that the reason she does that is because she's thinking that she's going to get another shot with him. So she kisses him and he immediately is like, oh my God, I'm so sorry if I gave you the wrong impression, but I am with somebody and I am not interested. So she is like, got it. My bad. And he is so fraught with guilt over it that he immediately goes to tell Shamara right before they are about to do this photo shoot because he is going to have a 1-day residency, if that is a thing, in Las Vegas, and she is going to open for him. He made sure to ensure that's how it went in order to give her an opportunity. Very, very sweet. I loved this. Well, he tells her, and she is thinking, oh, perfect opportunity. I'll be super cool about it, emphasize how not big a deal it is, and I will lay the groundwork for, oh, shit happens. Let's just say it'll never happen again and move on. And then when I confess, he will have to react the same way. Well, I could have told her if she had thought for 2 seconds about this, that what he said happened to him is not what happened with her. She initiated the kiss with Marco. Yes, he was very much laying the groundwork, and he was extremely obvious about it. But she went for it. It was her. That is not what happened with Rogelio. And he rightfully points that out. And not only cancels the photo shoot, but, not even cancels. He asks the guy, do you have what you need? Because I guess he's just accepted that Shamara is still opening for him. So they are going to have to be part of this thing together. But he says this shoot is over, as is my relationship with you. And he really storms up out of there. Now, when Shamara had asked Jane whether she should tell him, Jane wasn't sure, which I thought was kind of mature of her, because she can be a bit of an absolutist when it comes to the morality of some things. But I appreciated her being like, oh, I don't know. I realize that you fucked up. So I don't think you're in danger of doing this again. And maybe if you aren't, you shouldn't say anything, because he can be pretty proud and vain. I personally think that, and maybe it would have been different if they hadn't double dated together the way that they did. But Rogelio has met Marco and was jealous of him, and just the whole vibe he gave off. Rogelio is so not humble. And I think he could recognize how much he was being undercut by this dude. So there was a real sense of being threatened in more ways than just the fact that this guy is on a date with Shamara. It felt like Rogelio had to acknowledge this guy might actually be a good guy. And so the fact that they have met and he already felt a way about this dude is going to be a big part of his reaction. And then there is the fact that because they have met, if there's any chance Rogelio were to run into this guy, I would not put it past Marco to say something to him. And I say this with a completely different attitude than I would have said before that moment at the bar, because the Marco that we met and went on a couple of dates with was not, in my opinion, the vindictive type. I don't feel that dude would have said anything, because he seemed to be a no drama type as much as he could be. But the fact that he showed up at that bar the way that he did is just sus to me. And due to that, I feel he is still low-key pursuing her a bit. And I thus am not sure he would keep his mouth shut if he ran into Rogelio. So that's why I feel like it was best to err on the side of telling him, because it's much better to hear it from you than it would be to hear from that guy, Anyway, so yeah, they are broken up by the end of this episode. And I think Rogelio is going to come to his senses and realize, but because I think it's a mistake to dump her. I get why he did, but also she recognized what she did was wrong and exactly the pattern she was enacting again. And I feel like if she goes to this therapist and talks it through and can explain to him what was going on with her in that moment, maybe he will start to understand. And Rogelio it's a weird thing. He can be a great listener, or he can be a complete garbage listener. It's really about whatever happens to be going on in the moment. So she has to catch him on a particular day. And then I feel like she'll be able to explain. We'll see. So, okay, let's talk about, there's a brief moment with Abuela at the very end of the episode where Petra's mother shows up. And I have been wondering where she was, because there's a moment when they're recounting their story to the couples counselor when Raphael says something about how my wife punched herself in the face. And I was like, oh, he still doesn't know her mom punched her. And then all of a sudden I was like, interesting that he knows some of what Petra got up to, but it seems like he doesn't quite get like the scope of it. And started wondering, her mom, she basically told her to get the fuck out, but where did she go? Well, Petra winds up reaching out to her mother this episode because she got abducted by Roman, who she says, and you guys, please forgive me, I watch these episodes more than once, but this time and the episode before, I watched it the same day that I recorded. And she says something to Roman in this episode about how she knew it was him and not his brother the moment, quote, Aaron kissed her. I didn't remember them kissing, you guys, at all. I gotta be straight with you. Did not. At all. So that was like apparently where she got her suspicion from, and I somehow, it just skated right past me. So what she does very predictably with Roman is she pretends to be the sex kitten who is on his side and wants to be part of this whole scheme that he's got going on, because what he has done is stolen a bunch of Sin Rostro's contacts and like clients and stuff and the people that work with her. So he is thinking that he can go right past her and make money on his own because she has pissed off and alienated a lot of people who could make some money if they teamed up with him. And they are already like making noises about being interested in setting up an alternate scheme. So Roman is figuring, Lauren says they kissed the end of 17. That was the one I accidentally watched today. Man, I don't know how that, like, it may have just gone right past me because I was so uncomfortable with the Aaron character. I didn't buy the acting. It felt really weird. And the jokes surrounding it felt like so easy in a way that I was just not really like as zeroed in and focused whenever he was on screen the way that I should have been, considering what I suspected. But I didn't start to suspect it until fairly late. So it's not like, you know, the whole time I was watching, I was looking for tells. But anyway, so she convinces him that she is in it for the money, and they have sex, which she like uses as an opportunity to sort of push his cell phone onto the floor out of sight, and then sneaks out of bed while he's asleep, takes the phone and calls the cops. And she saw a mile marker, so she's able to tell them like exactly what mile marker they are off, which is lucky. And he comes up behind her just as she's like saying who to notify. It startled me because like I knew he was going to be there, but it still got me a little bit. And we get a bit of a chase scene, and eventually she winds up near like a marina sort of area where there are all these tools, and I don't know what this tool is that she uses because it looks like a harpoon, and I'm like, maybe it's like a fish spear or something. But eventually he finds her and comes running up on her, and she just lifts this as like a reflex, it feels like, and he impales himself again. Because what I had thought might be the case is the case, that he dressed his brother up in his clothes and killed his own brother so that he could make good his escape, which is really cold-blooded. God damn. So what the cops find is that microchip, that hard drive. Now, I am really unclear on this, you guys. We see him get the necklace from Petra, bust it open, look at the hard drive, and then he hands it over to Michael. And Michael tries to decrypt it, and there's only like one word on there or something. I don't even remember what it is. But it's a word that, like, it's not really meaningful. And then they find this one. And Michael says to Nadine, hard drive, I think maybe this is the real one, and that he had like a fake. Why would he bother? Why is it that he needed the other one? Like, why tell them about anything at all? Because that, I mean, I may be missing something. It maybe the word that they decrypted from the first one was the password for the second set of information. Maybe I missed them saying that, but it just feels like they had him do something to mislead the viewer that doesn't actually make sense for his character to have done. And I don't know if I'm just sort of, once again, maybe skating past something. So let me know if there is a thing that explains his reasoning behind this. But long story short, I wondered why Nadine didn't look too happy about him finding this hard drive thing, thumb drive. And it turns out it's because her name's on it. And Michael has like a bit of a flashback moment when he's talking to her, where we get to see all of the moments where she sort of tried to throw him off the scent or send their investigation into a wrong direction. And it turns out that Sinrostro was threatening to kill her entire family if she didn't give them information about where the investigation was and what they were getting and try and like misdirect. Now, she did not know, and I believe her, that Rose was Sinrostro. And Michael is so betrayed, but honestly, they were threatening the lives of her family. Like, I don't really know what else she could do. It's the sort of thing that you want to think that you would like be kind of noble and attempt to catch this person anyway. But like, is that noble? Is it noble to like risk the lives of innocent family members who do not know they are being risked and have not agreed to this, to attempt a like takedown of an organized criminal who is so successful that they have evaded any kind of, you know, like law enforcement so far? I don't think I'd take those odds. I've got to be honest with y'all. It's one thing to just take bribes, which even that, sometimes you are still saving family members. So even that I can kind of like understand, especially in the United States where we don't have socialized medicine. I mean, there is a lot of leverage you could hold over people depending on what their situation is like. But when you're threatening people's lives, that's putting them in a real hard place. And I feel like Michael sort of gets that a little bit. And he also, you know, they had a bit of a thing. So he tells her that she's got an hour lead, maybe 2, before he tells somebody. He's like, it might take me a little while to find your name in that list. So I was really glad too, because like we have him going through the list and then him putting his hand over his mouth and looking really shocked. And I really thought that we were going to like have the episode end before we got to find out who was on that list. And there's only like a brief, like couple of seconds between that and him confronting her. But in those few seconds, I was trying to imagine who it was that could have made him get that expression. And Nadine didn't even enter my head, to be honest. I was sort of like, what is it, fucking Abuela? Like, why, you know? But it being Nadine, makes total sense. So she, I guess, is going to like run for her life. And I'm sort of curious what's going to happen with that. This is always an interesting thing when shows have people who have to be got rid of but aren't killed, because that's sort of leaving a door open for them to potentially like re-enter the show at some other point as like a big moment. So I'm kind of wondering if we're going to have that with Nadine. Is she going to like resurface at some point? Okay. So so another thing with Michael, Andy, oh boy. Andy calls Michael because they had a date scheduled that night that he had to cancel because of everything that happened with Petra. And I had forgot to wrap up the Petra thing. She stabs him, and then she's like at the hotel. She calls Raphael to try and tell him what happened, but Jane just got there, so he doesn't want to talk. And so she obviously kind of flipped out at the fact that she just killed somebody, calls her mom. And I feel like that's an extremely bad move. And I don't know what you think is going to happen, Petra, but it's not good. And because she invited her mother to the hotel and Abuela is picking up Jane, she spots her mom and recognizes her as the woman who pushed her down the stairs. And I don't know where that's going, because like her saying that's what happened, it's just basically at this point a sort of like he said, she said kind of situation. And I don't know what kind of security cameras they've got, if it would be possible to pick that up. But I had already thought that maybe they would have checked them. And I'm realizing now, maybe they just think that Abuela like just slipped. Maybe they don't know that she was pushed. But and how long do they keep those security cameras? Like probably not very long. Maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. I don't know. It depends though. Modern, like the technology we have nowadays is capable of so much more storage. It's possible they keep things for longer than that, but who knows? So it may be that there's not a whole lot to be done about it. But so Michael, he is talking with Andy because she calls about him like canceling their date and just like want to see how you're doing, and I'm having a good time with you, and kind of wondering where this is going. And he's like, oh shit, are we having this conversation? And they get sort of interrupted, but he manages to tell her in that moment right before that he talked to a few people about her, and he mentions Jane. And Andy realizes, oh shit. So she goes to Jane's baby shower because Jane's whole writing group was invited. And Jane rightfully is like, what are you doing here? Which is funny because she has this reaction. And as far as she knows, Andy is not aware that Jane knows who she is. So if Andy hadn't talked to Michael, she might have been like, why are you, what is that about? Or maybe she would have immediately understood. But either way, she's like, can we talk? And she, I think, makes a pretty reasonable case. She says to Jane that she still cared about Michael. She had a mutual friend sort of reach out and feel him out. And that person said Michael was still very much hung up on Jane. And she was just really curious who Jane was and what she was like. And so, like, they keep using the word stalk. I guess that's accurate, but it feels kind of like dramatic to me. Signing up for the same class as somebody else because you want to meet them, I don't feel like that counts enough towards like a pattern for me to really consider it stalking. I don't know though what else she did. Like there may be more to it than that, but that feels not like that big a deal to me, you know? And I also kind of have to understand where she's coming from with the curiosity. Like if you really care about somebody and they have a very serious history with another person and you just like want to understand it a little bit better. I get that, you know. I have been like desperately curious about my ex-husband's new wife. I looked into her online and she seems kind of amazing, but I always have kind of wanted to meet her and just like get a vibe on what she's like. I wouldn't sign up for a class that she was going to be in because she would put together who I was eventually. And I feel like that would be very uncomfortable, but I sort of get why Andy didn't think that was going to be an issue. But anyway, I personally just understood where Andy was coming from. So when she asks Jane, she says, I know like this is weird, but can you please just not tell Michael about this? Jane gives her an incredulous look. A look that says, I can't believe you even fucking asked me. Get the fuck out of my face. And obviously is planning to say something. I understood Jane being irritated, but I don't know that I would have said anything to Michael. I think I kind of would have understood it and been like, all right, I won't say anything, but you can't come to the writing group anymore. It's fucking weird. Okay. Like that would probably be my stipulation. And then if it turned out that she was continuing to like follow me into different areas of my life, then maybe I would say something then. But I think I might have given her a pass here. It's not that big a violation to me. She, though, decides to tell Michael herself because Jane made it very clear she would if Andy didn't. So when she tells him, we don't get the full scene, and it's not until later, he comes to Jane and is basically like, you knew, how could you not tell me? Well, the first time she tried to tell you and you got pulled away. The second time, I don't remember if she had a real chance to tell you or not, but she says, you seemed so happy and I didn't want to ruin it for you. And he seems kind of moved by that, but he texts Andy, I still can't get past what you did. I think this has to end. Which, Michael, I just want to say that all things considered, the fact that you got this mad at Jane for not telling you she was aware who Andy was, and this mad at Andy for not telling you that she was like stalking Jane. I'll use that word. How can you not understand the level of betrayal that Jane felt at what you did? Because these feel like fairly minor infractions, but you seemed real upset. And what you did was so much worse, and you just acted like she was overreacting the whole time. You know, like, come on, man, get your brain together and see the gravity of what you did, guy. And yeah, I'm wondering if like now Andy is going to blame Jane for them splitting up. I also sort of think that maybe the fact that Jane said, well, you seemed really happy and I just didn't want to ruin that for you, reminded him why he cares about Jane. And also he caught her right after she had been dumped and she tells him that her and Raphael broke up. So he is out here thinking that she is available, and probably that is influencing him telling Andy that he doesn't want to see her anymore because Andy was fine when Jane wasn't an option. But if Jane is potentially back on the menu, then fuck Andy. And I feel like that's not going to be pretty. I guess we'll see how much of a stalker Andy really is. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I sort of missed. There's a brief moment with Petra and Michael where she's hugging him after they rescue her. I say that, but she had already like killed him. So whatever. And I was sort of feeling like there was a bit of chemistry between them a little bit. Like Petra is so money oriented that I don't see her being interested in a detective. You know, what kind of money can he possibly make? That said, she has a controlling interest in the hotel. So maybe she doesn't care about a dude with money so much anymore. Maybe it'll be a nice change for her to be the one with the money instead. I don't know if Michael would ever be interested in Petra after seeing her cheat so flagrantly, though. So probably that won't go anywhere. I just felt something, you know, that's all I'm saying. I'm trying to think if there was anything else because, you know, there's so many different like little side plots here. And I feel like I pretty much got everything. The scene where Rogelio sings at her baby shower is really something, though, you guys. Oh my God. I don't know if that was his actual voice. Maybe it wasn't, but I was sort of thinking that they might have him like not be that good at singing. And I was like, well, the man is famous now. So if he weren't good at singing, everybody would already be aware of that because he would have done it in front of people by now, you know, like for sure. So I should have realized, but I kind of was waiting for like something really silly to happen. And really what they have him do is like overact throughout the scene. And it's pretty good. But yeah, I just like scrolled through real quick. And as far as I can see, there is nothing else that I missed in this episode except, yeah, the very last scene is Abuela spotting Petra's mother and recognizing her. All right. Well, this is a really fun episode. Feel like we've got some forward movement on a few things. So we'll see how this goes with her and Raphael broken up because I don't see that sticking. But who knows? All right. Thank you guys again for hanging out with me. Thank you, Lauren, for commissioning this. Appreciate you so much. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.